Noted before the break, it's a little chilly out here this morning, but give me a feeling, how do the horses react to this?
The horses are all wild this morning. I mean, it was cool this morning. We had a damp rain, so it's been kind of a fall-like morning.
It absolutely has been a fall-like morning. About midway through the meet, you are having a very good meet. I pulled up the Equibase stats today. You are tied in fourth for the number of wins. How are you feeling, as I say, just past the midway point?
Yeah, I mean, we started off with a bang. You know, we reeled off 6 or 7 winners right off the bat. We've slowed down a little bit. Having said that, when I look back at how the horses have run, you know, we've been very competitive. We've been finishing second and third, a lot of stakes. So, I mean, you've got to feel good about it. Anytime you can come up here and be competitive like we have, it's a good feeling.
Yeah, number 4 on the list at Saratoga is very, very good. Still plenty of time to add to that, too, and we'll talk about some of the options coming up in that regard. Saratoga is very unique. It's unique for the fans. I always say it ties into the city and downtown and whatnot, but for the folks on the backside here, that also ties in too, because there are a lot of social events, and so it makes for, I would imagine, a different 24 hours for a trainer. Give us some insight, and what's a day in the life of a trainer like? Take us through a typical day at Saratoga.
Yeah, it's very different for me. I mean, I'm used to training out of Fair Hill, where I'll be there till noontime on a normal day. I don't usually get racing at Fair Hill. I spend, you know, usually when I get done my morning at noontime, I'll go home, have some lunch, come back to the barn, finish off the day, organize the next day. So I'll watch the horses run on television. Here, it's much more social, like you say. I'll be here till about 10 o'clock, often go for lunch or for breakfast. I'll always go to the races if I have runners, and usually we have something in the evening. So it's very social. Have a lot of people at the barn, a lot of owners come by, owners that I don't get to see the rest of the year. So it's very different. A month is, it's a tough month, but it's great to be here.
And what time do you typically start?
My first lot goes out at 6 o'clock, so I try to be here 5:30. You know, on top of that, I try to get home a couple of days a week, usually Monday and Tuesday. So you fit a lot in, a lot of driving, but it's all good.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because you are based down at Fair Hill. So typically during the month, a couple of days back there minding the horses there?
I like to get home for at least 2 or 3 days a week. So this week I was home, you know, Tuesday's a dark day. Wednesday I didn't have anything going on. Thursday I drove back up last night. So to be here for training this morning.
How long a drive is that?
It's about 5 hours back to my base at Fair Hill.
And let's talk about that. I was going to get into that later, but now's the perfect time. You are based at Fair Hill, and you may be the guy, you may be to blame for it becoming so popular back in the Animal Kingdom days. And Fair Hill really has become a major training center now. A lot of folks over the past couple of years are based there, and some important horses have come out of there into stakes races. Just give us a little feel for Fair Hill and why it's such a prominent training facility now.
Well, I think the trend has changed. You know, when I first started training, we were based at Pimlico and Laurel. It was very unusual to be training out of a training center back then. It was almost unfashionable. I think it was hard to get new owners when you train in a training center. I think now it's almost done a 360. I think it's become quite fashionable. I think people have realized the benefits of being on a training center. And you know, Fair Hill, like you say, has become very popular. We had Barbaro before us. We had Animal Kingdom there. I mean, a lot of good horses have come out of there. And quite frankly, it's quite hard to get in.
Yeah, it is filled up now. They've added some new barns over the past couple of years, correct?
Yeah, we as barn owners, we run it like a condo association. So we control, you know, the building of barns. We make the decisions. There's a couple more sites there where barns could be built.
And talk a little bit about the actual training. There are some different surfaces there, and also I see on social media you guys put up pictures during the year of just the horses out in the fields and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, we turn out, most of my horses get turned out in the morning. We have 3 round pens where it's fairly restricted. Then we have 2 pretty decent-sized paddocks where we can turn the horses out. So, you know, it makes it a little bit of a tough balance bringing horses up here. You don't want to take them away from that environment for too long. You kind of have to juggle with how many days they're up here.
Training surfaces themselves?
Training surfaces, we have the Tapeta, the synthetic of Michael Dickinson's, which I'm crazy about. I train on that a lot. That's inside the dirt, which is a mile oval. Then we also have a steeplechase course there, which we can use for turf workouts, which is, you know, that's how I got Animal Kingdom ready for the Breeders' Cup that year, was on the turf course.
Talk a little bit about the Tapetas compared to maybe some of the other synthetic surfaces, because I know that really is a popular synthetic surface. Is that the one at Golden Gate? Because Golden Gate is probably one of the synthetic surfaces that gets the least objections from fans and horsemen alike.
I think that's a good point. I mean, you don't hear people complain about Golden Gate and Presque Isle. You know, synthetics have really come out of favor, which I think is a terrible shame. I mean, Golden Gate and Presque Isle, we haven't had any issues with. They've done well. They're great. I love running at Presque Isle. It's the same surface we have. I train a lot on the Tapeta.
Very good. All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the horses you have in this weekend. And while we talk, we're going to take a look. Obviously, tomorrow, one of the big races on the calendar every year up here at Saratoga is the Grade 1 Alabama, $600,000. They're going to go 1.25 miles, and that is going to be the big question mark for a lot of these. You have Fortune Pearl in there, coming off the win in the Delaware Oaks. As we talk, we're going to take a look at that Delaware Oaks. Number 8 is going to be Fortune Pearl. Number 4 is Joint Return, also in the Alabama tomorrow. Fortune Pearl, are you a numbers guy? Because it looks like on the buyers, Fortune Pearl probably has to step up a little bit. But it seems like off of this, she maybe is kind of getting into some really good form right now.
No, I think that's true. I mean, she does have to step up. The numbers are a little light. I just like the way she keeps improving. You know, certainly that day she pulled away and won a fairly competitive race very comfortably. But, you know, this is going to be a whole other step tomorrow for her. She's running against some serious fillies. You know, she wasn't beaten that far in the Black-Eyed Susan behind Todd's filly, and that's what really kind of made me think she was this type of filly. And I honestly think the Mile Nacorda is going to be up her street.
I see you're bringing in Trevor as well.
Yeah, I mean, Trevor's ridden her great. I think he's a real up-and-comer. He's a very smart rider. He was able to ride up here for me earlier on in the meet, so he's had a little bit of experience, which I think is good.
Yeah, we've been watching, and we do this show all year long and more concentrate on the handicapping side of the game. But we have Dave Rodman on regularly. We've talked about Trevor quite a bit over the past year or so, and he is a guy I think you got to keep your eyes on.
He's actually galloped for me since he was 15, so he's
really?
been around a long time with us. So.
And I think, as I say, he is an up-and-comer. Probably the countdown is on to his showing up here.
No doubt. I mean, this will be a great exposure for him. It's a great opportunity for him, and he's done very well with this filly.
Let's move out now. I know you had some bad news. Can't Help Believing was scheduled for the Secretariat tomorrow out at Arlington on the Million undercard. We're going to take a look. Can't Help Believing won a nice allowance race up here back on July 18th, the number 3 horse we watch here. But he came up with a little bit of an issue. Give us an update.
Yeah, he just wasn't quite 100% the last morning that he was supposed to ship to go to Arlington. You know, it's a long way to go if you're not.
Yeah.
Had the race been at Monmouth or up here, I would have had a couple more days to work with him, but I just didn't feel like he was quite right.
And so, how is he now?
He seems okay. I mean, he galloped this morning, but again, when you're going to a Grade 1 for the first time and you've got to ship to Chicago, you sure want to be on your best game.
Very good. All right, then let's look out at Sunday now. Sword Dancer. This is intriguing because you're bringing in the United Nations winner, Main Sequence. We're going to watch the United Nations here. Our friends from West Point, Twilight Eclipse, the number 3 will have the lead and get run down by number 5, Main Sequence. Main Sequence, this was the first start in the United States for Main Sequence. Comes back, and Twilight Eclipse is in here again. Twilight Eclipse also had kind of a heartbreak finish. In this race, the Sword Dancer last year got run down by Big Blue Kitten. So that's going to be fun to see Twilight Eclipse off of the second place last time to you and off of the second place in this race last year. But again, I think Main Sequence showed an affinity for the United States. The first time off the plane is often a good race, and sometimes they regress. But how's he coming into it?
I mean, he's done great since. Rajiv came back off him that day and said, even if he'd been beaten today, he ran a huge race. We wouldn't have been disappointed. It was a bonus that he won. He got very sick when he came to this country over the winter. He was actually up here at Newburgh. He ended up in a clinic for 3 or 4 weeks. So I really took my time bringing him back. I like to think I've given him plenty of time to get over that first race, but I thought it was an impressive race.
It was a very good race. Rajiv back on again, and I think it's a fun field, as I say, with Twilight Eclipse in there, Amyris Prince. I think off of that last one, you maybe scratch your head a little bit. Imagining for Shug is interesting. I think it should be a good addition. That's Sunday, the Grade 1 Sword Dancer. I want to show one more race and just talk a little bit about a maiden winner, a first-time starter you had win earlier in the meet. August 2nd, it's going to be Strong Coffee. Strong Coffee is the 4-horse, and again, this was the debut effort, and I wanted to bring this up because it was another of the first-out winners from Warriors Reward, who as a sire has just gotten off to a blazing hot start, and I'm wondering, I think 7 for 13, first out of the box now for Warriors Reward as a sire, numbers something like that, just incredible. Mentally, do you see that in these horses?
I mean, he certainly seems to be a very mature type of horse. I mean, his numbers are phenomenal. Trust me to have the first one going long on the grass, right? But this horse is a horse who's really handled everything we've thrown at him, and I think I think any time there's a Warriors Reward running, you've got to watch out for them for sure.
Absolutely. And again, is it? Do you see a difference with a horse that wins first time out? Do you know it ahead of time? Is there a demeanor that just says, all right, I'm ready to go?
Yeah, I mean, he's a horse, like I say, that kind of handled everything we gave to him. You know, you don't bring 2-year-olds up here unless you feel like they're going to run,
Yeah.
because it's so competitive. So, but definitely he was a horse that handled everything very well.
What do you think's next up for him?
We'll run him back here with anticipation, for sure, as long as he's doing well. I kept him up here.
All right. Want to also talk a little bit about second careers has become certainly a hot button issue in the industry and thoroughbred aftercare alliance and whatnot. But you have a horse that was in your barn in the racing days, finished third in the Preakness in 2008, won over $500,000, won the Evan Shipman up here in 2011. As I say, third in the Preakness, won the Teshio. I'm talking about Ichabod Crane, and it's been fun to follow him on your website as you shifted him into a second career. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, very cool horse. I mean, we were fortunate that Earl Mack gave him to my wife when his career was over. We'd always had in mind that he'd be a great horse to go into 3-day eventing. We have a good relationship with Philip Dutton, who's one of the best 3-day eventers in the world, perhaps. So we'd sent Philip a few horses before that hadn't handled it as well. He's quite tough, critical on them, let's say. But he really took to Ichabod, and he competed at a new level this weekend, finished 5th overall, which my minimal understanding of 3-day eventing was pretty good for a first out. So, you know, the idea really was to bring attention to second careers for these horses, and he was a perfect horse to do it with. He was an older horse, he ran a long time, and he was a New York bred. He was a popular horse, and I think it just shows what can be done.
Yeah, and I notice on your website, and it's hgrandmotion.com, the Herringswell Stable website, there's a Herringswell Warriors page that kind of follows horses that have come through your barn into their second careers. That's fun, too.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of take pride in doing that. My secretary, Sue, is very good at finding homes for horses that, for whatever reason, don't go on as race horses. We're also in an area where there's a lot of opportunities with fox hunting and show jumping, but we do try to keep track of them, and it's amazing some of the things these horses have gone on to do.
Yeah, and as I say, you can follow some of the second career exploits over on your website. Speaking of which, seems like you're a guy that is engaged in social media. You tweet a lot, as do the folks associated with Herringswell. Are you a believer in social media and using that to reach out to the fans?
I am. I have to blame my daughter. She really got me into it, Jane. But, you know, I think it works so well with horse racing. I think it's so informative. It's a great way to keep up with handicapping. I've had a few situations where I just think it's really helpful for the guys that follow me that might not know whether I'm going to run a horse or not run a horse, or if a horse had a particularly good work. I don't get too into it, but I think it really works with horse racing, and I think it broadens our horizons, perhaps.
Absolutely. Speaking of the game and the state of the game and whatnot, you were one of the signatures on the letter that was put out within the past couple of weeks talking about the banning of race day Lasix. Talk a little bit about that and your stance on that issue.
Yeah, I mean, to me, more has been made of it as being a Lasix issue. This wasn't really brought about as Lasix. This was more about treating horses on race day. I mean, quite frankly, any medication, you know, we just need to become on a level playing field, I think, with the rest of the world in order to get respect, because we're just getting a bit of a bad rap over here. And I think as we can get closer to doing away with these medications, I'm afraid it's going to put us in a better situation worldwide, in the bloodstock world as well.
And give me your opinion. You're a prominent player in the game right now. Just the state of the game in general at this time, 2014.
I mean, I think things have come a long way. I think this new state program where we're trying to get all the states on the same medication policy, that's a huge step. I mean, this is the problem we have in our industry, is every state has different regulations, and quite frankly, as a trainer, it's extremely confusing, and I don't think people realize quite how complicated it is. So anytime we can get more states on the same regulations, the same program, that's going to be a big step. And I really think we've come a long way, quite honestly.
I agree. I think the last few years, as the Mid-Atlantic states, and it's branched out a little bit, have reached in and gone for those uniform rules, it is making a difference. And hopefully we can continue that progress. It's not as fast as we might like, but I think we are moving in the right direction.
It's going to take a long time.
All right, Graham, we certainly appreciate the visit this morning. Again, good luck tomorrow in the Alabama, Sunday with the Sword Dancer, and throughout the remainder of the meet.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Graham Motion. All right, we'll take our break. When we come back, Dave Litfin from the Daily Racing Forum. Stay tuned.
Face it. Most horse racing websites are just too much clutter, too much to navigate through. Next time, log on to capitalotb.com. Our newly designed website is easier than ever to use, with all the information the professional horse player needs. Capital